When I started bending this speaker mats, I had full intentions of recording the whole thing and editing it later, but there were so many possible bends and it was taking me hours to find them in between soldering, so the videos that I started taking at the beginning were just hours in length and they barely had any content, and my angles were also awful, as you'll see, because I've kept just a small bit of the footage in. But I was working just out of the main camera's view, and then the second camera angle only had the back of my hand. Instead, I'm just gonna talk about a few things I found when bending it. Firstly, I'm gonna explain how to solder an audio in out onto a toy. The jack connectors I've bought are in stereo, which is why they have 3 pegs, but toys are usually in mono, so we'll only need the back 2 pegs. We use the back 2 pegs as that's where the tip of the jack lead is when it's plugged in, and the tip I think carries the most signal. The jack outputs I've bought disconnect on the one side when the jack lead is plugged in, as there's a metal bridge that lifts up on the one side, and we always want the side that doesn't disconnect wired to the circuit board. The easiest way to connect the output to the toy is by unsoldering the 2 wires that connect the speaker to the circuit board first. Then solder them onto the back 2 pegs of the side of the audio output that does not lift up. In this case, it's the right side. When doing this, remember where you're soldering each wire. For example, if you unsolder the plus wire and resolder it onto the middle peg, and the minus one onto the outer peg, you're going to want to do the opposite on the other side, so soldering the plus wire onto the outer peg and the minus wire onto the middle peg. Then, once you've connected the output to the circuit board, you can connect the speaker to the output. Do this by soldering the wires to the side of the output that does lift up and break the circuit when the jack is inserted. In this case, it's the left side. This is exactly the same if you're going to add an input onto something. You just need to connect the mic wires to the side that lifts up and breaks the circuit. But always connect the side that doesn't break or lift up to the circuit board. Otherwise you can end up breaking the signal and it's just not going to work. I first started by extending the battery and speaker wires. Otherwise I wasn't able to pick up the circuit board because they were so short. And then I installed a kill switch. I didn't install it as early as I probably should have. It took me a while before I thought of the idea. But basically try and install a kill switch as early on as possible before you look for any bends. It'll save you a lot of time in taking in and out batteries. I mean, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really does help in the long run. To install a kill switch, you're going to want to have a normally open switch, so one that allows the signal to pass through unless it's pressed. Snip the middle of the wires that connect the batteries to the circuit board and solder the switch in that gap. Then when you press down on the button, it'll break the circuit, so it'll turn the toy off and I guess essentially reset it. When connecting potentiometers, solder the wires to the outside and the middle pegs, and depending which outside peg you decide to solder on, it'll change the signal to turn clockwise or anti-clockwise. The biggest lesson I learned when bending the speaker mats is to always check that it still works after every wire you solder to the board. The amount of times when bending this I got carried away soldering wires and making bends, only for it to crash or glitch or just not work when I turned it on to play with it. And then, because I'd been just soldering away, I didn't know which wire was causing the problem, so I'd have to unsolder all of them and start the process all over again. After unsoldering and resoldering the bends over and over again because they kept crashing, I realised about halfway through that the bend that was causing me the most problems was the looper, which is really annoying because it was also my favourite bend. This is also why it's not in any of the videos. I'll try and add a video near the end It's not in the videos of me making samples just because it was giving me too much grief, so I removed it. And I added it later when I decided to make sampler instruments with it because it made it so much easier to make sampler instruments with. The looper is made by connecting a push switch with a toggle switch. The push switch, when held, can be used to pick the audio part that you want to loop, and then the toggle switch is used when you want to hold that loop and mess around with it, so you can like go hands-free and just glitch out the loop without having to worry about holding the loop button down. The bends I have done so far are the pitch bend, the kill switch, the tone generator, put an audio output, the looper, and I have about 6 glitch bends. They're all like, I think they're all on toggle switches, so like you switch the one and it's connected to another, and then you switch that one and it glitches out even more, and they all make like slightly different glitches. Some of them are really long and some of them are like really short, so that's why I have so many of them. But yeah, that's just a few things I learned when bending this speaker mat. It definitely was a journey, and it took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but it was really fun, and I will definitely like look into it more in the future. Maybe try and find some more bends, but for right now I think I'm done with it. I'll probably drill some holes in it just to like stick it so I don't have to sellotape the toggle switches to like the handle anymore. It'd probably be a good idea, but I'm just too scared to drill it. I'm always too scared I'm just gonna ruin it, so I'll probably leave that for another day.